Long time no talk to you. So I'm going to tell my Kevin story. Back in 2014, 2012, I don't know. It was in Denver, Colorado.
Oh, I remember.
I was already well into my career doing vulnerability analysis and training.
Yeah.
And I took Kevin's web application vulnerability analysis class. At, I believe it was that Global AppSec.
Yes, yeah, it was in Denver, and James Jardine taught it.
Yeah, I'm a developer, so I know that there's a ton I don't know. I mean, the amount I don't know so overweighs the number of things I do know. It's not even funny anymore. But attending his class made me recognize the total scope of how much I didn't know what I didn't know.
Oh, man.
I left both nights there like going, oh.
You know, it's now a 3-day class.
What am I doing?
So I always talk about, like, I'm a list guy.
Yeah.
I have OCD, and I don't mean, like, I'm not one of those people like, oh, I have OCD, everything's got to be in order. No, neurologically diagnosed, I have OCD. And I do lists. And when I decided I was going to become a security person, I wrote a list, and I want to say that it was 20 things. And it was 20 things that I needed to learn to be a security person. And when I learned one, I checked it off. And I realized I had a list of 37 things that I needed to learn. I checked the next one off, and I had a list of about 78. Currently, that list is 4,387,000,000. Like every single time. This is why I say to people that we don't have imposter syndrome. We always hear on Twitter that we have imposter syndrome. Like, oh, I have imposter syndrome and I don't deserve what I've got. That's not what it is for many people. I'm not saying that all people don't have imposter syndrome. In my opinion, the majority of the people out there, not me because I'm an idiot, but the majority of the people out there that are good at their job, good at security, good at what they're trying to do, that think they have imposter syndrome, it's not that they have imposter syndrome, it's that they've realized how much stuff they don't know. I really think that's important for people to understand because it gets very depressing sometimes, right?
Yeah.
We fight with things, we try to learn every day it's something new, which I love about this industry. But at the same time, every day I learn something new, I find 10 things I didn't even know I needed to know. So I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed the class. I'm glad to hear we overwhelmed you. That is our goal, right? If you do not bleed from the ears and nose by the end of a course, we haven't taught you enough. Not literally, of course. I just came out of the green room, right? And I've always laughed at that term, the green room. Yeah. But I just want to point out that for the first time at any one of these conferences, the first time in my life, I've been on national television, I've been in conferences around the world. It's the first time the room was actually green. I joined. Ryan is there, great guy, very helpful, right? Let me test everything, do this. And then I noticed every single thing about his room was green. It was crazy.
He's got it set, ready to go.
Please.
Hey, since we're bantering, would you mind taking a second and talking about the 501? 501st Fleet?
For the people who don't know, the 501st is a costuming group. I'm a member. I'm also a member of the Rebel Legion, which is the sister organization. And what we do is we build screen-accurate costumes, and then we wear them for charity. So we will go and visit children's hospitals. I've done multiple now, 5Ks in costume. So I did a 5K as Darth Vader. I did a 5K as an Imperial Guard, the velvet long red robes and the helmet. I do want to be very clear. I hope that you all heard that I said I did a 5K. I did not say I ran a 5K.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to run it.
I'm fat and lazy. My understanding is not 2020, but in 2019, I've not seen the numbers for 2020. In 2019, I believe it was $17 million that was raised for charity. So even if I'm wrong and it was only $11 million, I'm perfectly fine wearing plastic armor to raise that for charity, right?
We have a relatively active group in Columbus, and we have a very, very well-regarded children's hospital. And one of my Cub Scouts was in there for a long time for a disease, and they stopped by, and he couldn't stop raving about it. It was the highlight of his life at that point.
And I will tell you that we cry the entire time we're there. And I want to say this for a reason. I want you to realize that the 501st will do events. You just have to reach out to us. You go to the website, you fill in the form. You don't pay us, right? That we can't take money. We don't want to take money. You just donate money to charity. Like, boop, boop, done. The number of times we've been there when somebody has rung the bell because their treatment is done. The number of times we've been at an event, not at the hospital, and had somebody come up and tell us how much it meant to them. And I want to be very clear, it means so much more to us, right? Like it's the best thing ever. And I recommend that anybody who wants to be involved, we take volunteers. Even if you don't want to build a costume, we need handlers. When I'm in my costume, the Chewbacca costume, I'm on drywall stilts. And I'm not that coordinated anyways. So, right? And so I can't really see very well. And what we do is we have people who help. They guide us. They make sure that we're okay. They help people take pictures and stuff like that. We're always looking for volunteers to do that. So, and we're worldwide. I had a woman at Dragon Con see me in costume, and I hear this, Chewbacca! And she ran and slammed into me. And I don't know how I didn't fall over, but she went ass over tea kettle, hitting me. I felt so bad. But she was so excited, right? And people will walk up and they're like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And we're all like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my God. It's incredible. It is.
That's amazing.
This is one of the helmets that's not finished, right?
Yeah.
So you can see the visor is not in yet. And the reason the visor is not in is I've not finished the weathering on the helmet.
Yeah.
This weathering almost got me divorced. So to paint it, what you do is you paint the whole helmet with a primer. Then you paint silver, right? Yeah. Then there's other ways to do it. You put toothpaste on top of the paint where you want the weathering. Then you paint black. You wash the toothpaste off. The paint comes off with it. You put more toothpaste on. You paint the white, wash, apply, blue. Okay? So how do you get the toothpaste off? Good question. Well, if you're dumb like me and you had just had a brand new pool put into the backyard, what's the best way to wash it off? You dunk the helmet in the pool, right? Oh, no. The toothpaste, the filter takes it out, of course, right? What I didn't think about, and by the way, to set the scene better, I work. So I was coming out to paint after hours, which meant it was dark out. And so my wife woke up the next morning and she went out in the backyard, and it's a brand new pool. So you go out with your coffee and you just, right? And you look at the pool and she freaks out because there's silver and black and blue paint chips everywhere. She thought her first thought was that something had happened, right? Like the pool was peeling or falling apart, right? Yeah, exactly. That's what it looked like. And then she realized, that she married one of the dumbest men in the world. And,
all right. Well, so you're going to sew this whole thing up and talk about how to communicate all the stuff we've been finding with all this automation.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin. As you've already heard me babble for a while. So today we're going to talk about Daleks performing Jedi mind melds. And I want to be very clear. My purpose with the title was to irritate everybody who heard it, right? Because of course we know mind melds are Star Trek, Jedis are Star Wars, and Dalek is Doctor Who. But the reality is, I called it this for a reason. What I have found, let's be very clear, I'm old. I'm an old, fat, lazy guy. And I realized just a couple weeks ago, I was having a conversation with Jason Gillum, my business partner, Denise, my wife and business partner, and we were discussing time and how long we've been doing things. And it hit me that I'm about to complete my 30th year as a professional IT person. That freaks me out. Totally freaks me out. I have actually been involved in IT professionally longer than many of the people in my company have been alive, which should say a lot, right? And what I have found over the years, both as a developer, as an admin, as a security person that works for an organization, and as a consultant and contractor. I've done lots and lots of different things. And what I've realized is very, very often, the problem we have with stuff is that we don't communicate well. And I'm a little embarrassed to be the guy having this conversation because I communicate horribly. I like to joke and say that English is my first language, implying that somehow I know other languages. I don't. I barely speak English very well, so it's a good thing that speaking isn't part of my job. But what I realize is that so often we're miscommunicating to each other. And what that miscommunication does is it drives much of the problems that we have. And so what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about those issues, give some examples of problems we've done, and then talk a little bit about what I think we need to do to fix it, how we can do better. And I want to be very clear, I don't have a solution. Like, I hope that at the end of this 45-minute period that you don't think, okay, Kevin's going to solve the problem. Peace in the Middle East. It's not what's going to happen with this talk, right? What I want to do is I want to give you some ideas of ways I think we can change so that we can make it better. And I think that one of the most important ways to do that is for us to understand there is a problem. Okay, so a little bit about me before we get started. I am Kevin. I'm the CEO, which is really just a fancy term for head nerd of Securities. We're based here in Jacksonville, Florida. We also have people in the Charlotte area, Denver, Tulsa, and Dallas, right outside of Dallas. We have people all over the place. We're not a huge company. We're 22 people currently, which is bigger than I ever thought we would be. I'm also an IONS faculty member. I'm a course author and instructor. We just talked a little bit about the course that Bill took. We actually have a full catalog on our website. By the way, if you are a veteran, active duty military, or first responder, we offer significant discounts for our training. And if anybody's in a position where they just can't afford the class, right? I don't need to know why. Reach out to me. Let me know. We'll see what we can do to help you. I also want to say, this is my sales pitch for the day. If you work with or know of a nonprofit charity, our services are free. And I want to be very clear, that's not free for 6 months and then you get hit with a bill. It is free for as long as we offer the service. There's only one rule. The nonprofit charity has to be approved by us. And the reason I say that is the US federal government has standards for what can be a nonprofit charity, and their standards don't meet mine. And I think the perfect example is there are Ku Klux Klan organizations and the Westboro Baptist Church that are all considered nonprofit charities by the government, and I'm not going to give them free services. So basically it boils down to you can't be a dick charity. We don't care about your politics, we don't care about your religion. If you're a decent charity, we'll help you out. Okay. I'm also an open source project contributor. I run the Samurai WTF project, a few other ones. And like we talked about, I am a member of the 501st. These are actually pictures of some of my costumes. The Vader costume up there That's me. It was actually a really neat event. They brought 300, I think it was 300 blind kids in, and they had them watch the Star Wars movies. And I thought it was interesting, not trying to make fun of it, but they referred to them as watching the Star Wars movie. And then at the end of it, they had us stand out there in costume so that the kids could come out and actually feel what the characters look like. So that's me with a little boy feeling what Darth Vader looked like. And I will admit it, 100%, I'm crying in that helmet. A lot of fun stuff. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, pretty simple. We're going to talk a little bit about why I think communication is important, why communication is critical to what we do. We're going to talk about the issues that I've seen and been. I will acknowledge the fact that when we talk about this, I have been the issue quite often. And then we're going to talk about solutions. I do see a lot of people are talking about 542 being a great class. I'm happy to hear that. I have not been part of 542 in years. And so I haven't seen any of the new stuff. I loved teaching it. I loved writing it when I was out there. There is actually a 6-day course that's open source called the Professionally Evil Web App Pen Testing Course 101. Go check it out. It's on GitHub. So why? Why do we do this? Well, security is critical. Now, I think it's safe that I can say that in a conference like this, and there isn't going to be a lot of disagreement that, oh, no, security is not that important. I don't think any of you disagree with it. Maybe you do. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you think security is a waste of time. Maybe you think it's okay that we get hacked. I don't know. I'm not going to argue it. I think security is critical. I do think that security, the industry, thinks a lot of itself, ourself. And I think that's a problem. I think that's part of the communication problem. I think that it is very, very critical as we move forward that we are part of everything we do. Even though we've been working on this stuff forever, we're still seeing breaches. We're still seeing new vulnerabilities. And I can jump on the marketing bandwagon. SolarWinds, look, all of us are there, right? All of us have had the problem. We've seen them for years, and we've fought with them for years. And they're not, in many cases, not hard. The problems that we see, the issues that we're trying to fix, right? They're just common sense. And I know, common sense is not so common. They really aren't huge hurdles, as we see here, right? In 1988, they released the Bug Track ID 1. That blows my mind. Oh, man. It was a sendmail flaw. It was a problem in the sendmail daemon. It was a problem with their debug command. And it was a vulnerability that I don't remember the specific details, but it was pretty significant, and they announced it. Okay. So then we have the latest release. And I just went and checked this morning. This is still currently the latest release of SendMail had a security problem in it. Okay. Now, we can pick on SendMail if we want, but I used it as the reference because it was the first bug track ID. Right. Notice I didn't say the first vulnerability, right? I'm in no way claiming that bug track is the be all end all of vulnerabilities, but I thought it was a good reference point. Since 1988, and if I'm doing the math right, that will be 32 years going on 33. So in October, it'll be 33 years. In 33 years, SendMail is still having security problems, right? And we can't think, we could think it, but it would be wrong, that the SendMail people don't understand security. We can't say that they don't care about security, because they do. SendMail is a very popular daemon. Yeah, it's not the only game in town anymore. There's lots of different options. It's still a major part of how we transmit email. And while, yeah, most of the email I get is spam, okay, not most, but lots of the email I get is spam. It's critical to how many people do business. It's critical to how many people do work, how they do their lives, how they keep in touch with family and friends, especially in a time of lockdown and pandemic, right? So you would think we could fix this. Yet, we're still fighting the same battles. We still deal with the same issues. I've been testing web applications too dang long. I'm still finding applications in production today that were written this year. Literally this year. We're 21 days in, right? That have SQL injection flaws, that have command injection flaws. SQL injection was one that pisses me off. Every time I find SQL injection, anytime one of my people finds SQL injection, I get angry. And the reason I get angry is because we know the solution. And there is. Like with cross-site scripting, we can always argue, well, is it output encoding, input filtering, is doing blah, 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 right? But with SQL injection, we know the solution, parameterized queries. Not only are parameterized queries the solution, if you used parameterized queries throughout your application would perform better than with dynamic SQL. So we have a solution that not only does it actually solve the problem, there are no known public exploits that will break parameterized queries. It solves the problem. It performs better than the option, yet we still find dynamic SQL in applications on a regular basis. Why? It's not because developers are dumb, and I've been just at fault at saying, oh, those idiot developers. It's because we're not communicating well. We're not getting people to understand risk. And I'm not going to sit here and have a GRC conversation. I'm not going to tell you that I understand risk. I put the CVSS calculator up. The CVSS calculator always makes me laugh. Here's a vulnerability that rates a base score of 9.6. If you play around with it with some environmental things, it drops to 9.4. The average overall is 9.5. This flaw is a username harvesting flaw. Username harvesting. Now, don't get me wrong, username harvesting is bad. I write it up in my reports when I find it. I tell developers how not to have it. I talk about why username harvesting is a problem. But do I think it warrants almost a perfect 10 in vulnerability? No, I don't. But if we look at the CVSS calculator and we answer the questions correctly, it does. That's a problem. I did the same exact calculation for a SQL injection flaw, and I think the rating was 7.3. So username harvesting is more important, more riskful, I don't know if that's a real word, than SQL injection. No, it's not. It's because we don't understand how to talk about risk. And then on the other side, how to communicate risk. I love this. This is a screenshot I've used quite a few times. It's an old screenshot. I want to be very clear. This, my understanding, is a gentleman, I want to say in Turkey, who tweeted out, Apple, this is definitely not a hack attack. A lot of exclamation points, so you can take him seriously. I'm not a hacker. I do security research. Then links to his YouTube video and tags Mike Butcher. I'm blanking on who Mike Butcher is. I think this is hilarious. I'm not sure why B4L1C thinks that he's so important that Apple would be following him, even when he doesn't tag them. He was a security researcher that knocked over Google Play twice and the Apple Developer Network at least once by doing security research. I've often said and stand by the statement that security research is often another phrase for illegal activity. Another phrase is, I got caught and I want an excuse. Now, there are some really good security researchers that are actually doing research. But most of the people that I've seen that say they're security researchers, they fall into this guy's category. Let me do something I'm really not allowed to do and then claim something. That's the problem with communication. Now, we can debate whether it's okay what he did. And I'd love to have that conversation sometime. I think there are valid reasons to do stuff like what he does, but it doesn't help anybody in the grand scheme if you just tweet out a YouTube link and hope people are paying attention. And what he found might be very serious. You know what? Probably is. But the way it was communicated is bad. And we, as an industry, seem to elevate this type of communication. We have people like Kevin Mitnick or Chris Roberts that stand up on stage and say, look at me, I'm a hacker. And they mean it in the destructive phrase. Because I'm not a person who thinks the word hacker is bad. I like being called a hacker. I like what I do. But we tend to idolize. We tend to put up on a pillar people who are doing bad. And then we excuse it because they're security researchers. Or we don't want the word hacker to mean criminal, right? I don't want it to mean criminal either. But if the shoe fits for you, then you should think about it. We want to talk about what the issues are. And in my mind, I feel that there are 4 categories of issues. We've got the language we use. We've got understanding, right? The knowledge. I use the word ignorance quite often. And I want to be very clear that when I say ignorance, I don't mean stupid. People use ignorant as an insult. It's not an insult. Ignorant means you don't know. You didn't have the opportunity to know. Now, if you don't know and somebody offers to give you the knowledge, if you have the access to the knowledge and you choose not to take it, QAnon, then you're stupid. But ignorance just means you don't know. Then we have the reality. What is the reality? What is going on? And I'm not talking about, and we'll talk about it later, I'm not talking about the earth is flat, right? And then we'll talk about the goals. These 4 things are what cause our communication issues. So the first one is language. We use language that we assume everybody understands. The example I give quite often, I was working with a company and we were talking and scoping a job. And they kept referring to the TCP settings. I did say QAnon when I said stupid. Just to be clear, I have opinions. We were talking about the TCP settings, the TCP configuration. I kept trying to wrap them back in, right? And then I found out that they didn't mean transmission control protocol. They talked about their internal application that was named TCP. Huh. Okay, what does that mean? Another example, when I worked at Blue Cross. This is bad. I'm an idiot. When I worked at Blue Cross, we had a change control process. And you had to give a risk rating for your control, your change. I opened up a ticket. We had a server. We were moving data centers. And I had a server that was in a rack and it had been off for a while and there was no other servers in the rack. And I needed to pull it. I had to unrack it, I guess is the phrase. So I opened up a change control because if every time you go in the data center, you had to have a change control ticket. So I opened up a change control ticket. I'm going to derack the server. And I gave it a risk rating of like nothing, right? Because it was a server that had been off for months, nothing else in the rack, whatever. I got a call from the change control people and they said, Kevin, you have to come in. And I said, okay, why? And they're like, because your change has to have a bigger risk. You're taking a server out of a rack. So I went to the change control meeting. As we're sitting there talking, I got called on. Okay, Kevin, let's explain. Let's talk about the different stuff. And the change control guy had been referring to something called TC-PIP. Mostly they were changes on the mainframe. And he would talk about TC-PIP, 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 TC-PIP. And I just assumed it was a mainframe thing. I didn't know, right? Mainframe thing. We get to my change, and he says, okay, so what's the TC-PIP address of the machine? And I said, oh, it doesn't have a TC-PIP address. It's a Linux box. It's not a mainframe. Everybody in the room went dead silent. Because it turned out that everybody else knew that he meant TCP/IP, but he didn't know that it was called TCP/IP. He called it TC-PIP. And so they all just went along with it instead of embarrassing him. And I had called attention to the elephant in the room. And I was an idiot because I'm like, no, it's a Linux box. We don't have TC-PIP. That's a mainframe thing. No, we do have TCP/IP settings. But it was a language barrier. And we see this all the time. Like security will talk about something and they'll say, oh, we have to do this. And IT will talk about the same thing, but they'll use a different term for it. We used to laugh at the name of malware, right? Because everybody who would discuss malware had their own name for it. It still happens today, right? And then you get into the business. and the business talks about things with their language. So let me challenge you, right? As a security person, as an IT person, as a whatever, right? Have you talked to the business about what they mean? Have you paid attention to the language they use? Have you tried to look at the things from their perspective, right? Because the language they're using is language we have to use so that we can communicate better. And is it cool to use terms like burp, snort, spit, vomit, right? The FU tool. Security is the only industry I know that you can talk about all of those things and have them be legitimate tools. It's hilarious how we talk about things. Heck, I run a project called Samurai WTF. And we always joke that it means web testing framework, right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I have my Python reference. But if you go and stand and talk to the business and you talk about the things in a language they don't understand, you can't communicate well. So one of the main problems I see is language. We also see a problem with understanding. We very often don't understand our own stuff. Do we know what something is? We talk about the cloud. I always laugh. And I've said this myself. How many people here have seen the sticker, the cloud is just someone else's computer? I love that phrase. I do. I use it. It's hilarious. And it totally misses the point of the cloud. When somebody stands up and says, seriously, when they say, as if they believe this, that the cloud is just somebody else's computer, they're either completely understanding what's going on with the cloud, or they don't know what they're talking about. And the reason I say that is, yes, the cloud is somebody else's computer, but it gives you so many other functionalities and abilities and capabilities. And I'm not trying to convince you to go to the cloud. I'm talking about that the majority of people using the cloud are actually using functionality that is not available easily in their own data center. And that's why we have to understand what we're talking about. Talk to me about containers. I love the idea of containers. I think they're neat. I don't understand them. I'm an old guy. I'm an IT boomer, I guess. I don't know. But because I don't understand them, I don't try to tell you how to use them. I lean on one of my other consultants that does. You guys come up with some horrible phrases. We have to think about what we mean. And we have to understand the other side. This is one of the examples I've already given, right? Understand what the business wants. Understand what they need. How many times have you said to people, oh, no, don't do that. No, you can't do it. Did you offer them a solution? Did you try to understand what they needed it and why they asked for it? When they come to you and say, hey, can you let me turn on macros in Word? Why? Why? Don't just say no. Ask why. Find out what they need. And we know that people don't understand each other because all of us are somehow on social media and we see it all the time. I love the fact that if you look at my Facebook profile, which by the way is 100% public, if you look at my Facebook profile, there are people who will tell you that I am 100% a Trump supporter. There are also people who will tell you that I'm 100% a Biden supporter. And there are people who will tell you that I'm an anarchist. I'm none of the three. But it's because I ask questions. And I ask questions to understand most of the time. Sometimes I ask questions just to snip at somebody. But we have to understand each other. We also have to understand what is reality. And I'm going to give you this example. This is one I've actually, it happened last year, it says September 2020, right? Somebody hit a coffee machine with ransomware. I don't know if ransomware running on is really what they meant. And here's what I mean. I read the article. I did. I know. We're only supposed to read the headlines and then get angry about it, right? No, I read the article. Here's what happened. This guy worked on a coffee machine, figured out, customized some stuff, and loaded ransomware into the coffee machine. That's kind of cool. That is kind of cool. But this isn't a threat of I'm viewing my email on a coffee machine and my coffee machine got hit with ransomware. By the way, the coffee machine could still make coffee, right? So people freaked out about this. I actually got phone calls. This is similar to a number of years ago when they figured out that they could compromise a teapot. And I got calls from banks that wanted to know what my recommendation for the teapot threat was. And I'm like, the teapot threat? Yes, they were English companies. But what is the teapot threat? And they're like, well, they found out that you could compromise the teapot and you could pivot from the teapot onto the network and do all this kind of stuff. Man, that sounds really bad. Do you have this teapot on your network? And they said, no. I said, well, then there's no threat, right? None. It doesn't matter how cool the attack was, right? The Nest. Do you remember when the Nest first came out, the Nest thermostat? And there was somebody created that if they got into your house and they pulled the Nest off and they hooked to, I think it was JTAG connectors, and they could load firmware into the Nest and then put the Nest back up on the wall and they could spy on you. It was like, whoa. Yeah, they could. But here's my worry. Not that they could screw with my Nest. They had broken into my house. If they're in my house, do you know any other things they could do? Exactly. And you're right. No teapot, no threat, except the coffee machine. Right? Like, understand what the threat actually is, not just what the headlines want you to do, not the thing like, oh man, we got to worry about this. Look, we got enough crap to worry about rather than custom ransomware running on a specific coffee pot. The last thing that we see as a problem is goals. Very often, the business, IT, and security have completely different end goals. Security wants to keep you safe. They want to keep things private. They want to play around with a CIA triad. We can do our CISP dance if you want to. IT needs things to run. Developers need to deploy code. They have to have applications. And exactly, if they can touch the hardware, the exploit isn't the issue. They have access to the hardware. Exactly. So we see that when we talk about these types of things, and it's like, oh man, we got to shut that down. And IT's like, no, you can't shut it down. We have an SLA we have to meet. We have to keep this up and running. So their goal is the SLA. Your goal is some metric on how many malware attempts you blocked or something. The business's goal, make money. Seriously, if you talk to the business, look, I'm a business owner. I run Secure Ideas. We've been doing it for over a decade now. In August was 10 years, which is mind-boggling to me. Do you know what my main goal is? My main goal is to ensure that every 2 weeks I can pay my people. I've got 22 people, including myself, that depend on me so they can pay their mortgage. They can pay their bills. They can feed their families. So you know what? I'm a security consulting firm. And my main goal is not to be secure. My main goal is revenue. And that's going to sound greedy. And I'm okay with that. I'm a greedy capitalist. I say it all the time. I want to be protested by the Occupy movement. That's how I'll know I'm rich, right? People on my cul-de-sac with signs, Occupy Kevin, I don't know, right? But the reality is, I want to make money. And yes, I would like to retire to my own private island. Not really. But I want to be able to pay my people. I want to make sure that they're healthy and safe and funded. And so my business goal is revenue. And if you come to me and say, Kevin, we have to lock down this system and it's only going to lower our revenue by 10%. My answer is going to be, screw you, hippie, right? Because I can't afford a 10% reduction in revenue and keep paying my people. It doesn't work that way, right? So my business goal would be opposite of my security goal. And that's a problem. Because if our goals are opposite, we are never going to agree. We're never going to be able to solve the problem. And so, in my opinion, we have to communicate what our goals are and work to ensure that our goals work in the same direction. It is acceptable to be slightly less secure to enable the business to run. Because I'll tell you right now, I can make your business 100% secure. Shut it down. Plain and simple. I should have put coffee in the middle, you're right. So we have to work on the goals. So how do we solve this? I can wrap it up right now. We can't. We can't. There's no easy way to fix this problem. The very first foundational step is we have to understand there is a problem. We have to understand what everybody's bringing to the table. We have to understand all of the 4 things I just said. We have to understand the languages we're using. We have to understand the goals of each side. We have to understand what we want to accomplish. Then we have to communicate. And when I say communicate, I mean it. We have to talk to each other. Let me ask you, how many of you have worked for an organization where security sat in an ivory tower? Not literally, I hope, but they were above all of us peons. The reality is we have to communicate with each other. I love when I go out to organizations and I see that the security team is going to the staff meetings of the developers. Your developers are having stand-ups on a daily basis in some organizations. Does your security team attend those? Did you attend them? Your project management team is having meetings about what they want to accomplish. Are you going? Did you read the annual report for your company last year? If you didn't do those things, and yes, I'm talking about going to meetings. Nobody likes going to meetings. Okay, some people like going to meetings, but they're psychotic, and we don't want to emulate them. But the reality is, if you don't get involved in what they're doing, then you're making a mistake. I used to work with a guy named Alex Enriquez. He was a really good guy. He was one of the people that inspired me to become a security person. And Alex very often would just wander around the campus. Blue Cross had a bunch of buildings and it was a campus. He'd wander around, right? And just talk to people. I had another really, really good friend I worked with, James Fields. And James is probably one of the smartest and nicest people you'll ever meet. And he was the network team. He was one of the main guys running the network for Blue Cross, same company. And he would do the same thing. He would just walk to other cubicles, other buildings, whatever. And he would talk to people. And he would figure out what they were trying to accomplish. And he would tell them what the network team was trying to talk about, what they were trying to accomplish. And he would explain why. He would explain what the purposes was, right? And he would try to get them to understand what the goals were for them. And he would just communicate. He was an open book, which was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then the final thing on there, the last piece of the solution is being honest. I've had too many people, and I probably have done it myself. I'd like to believe I haven't, but that would probably be a lie. We talk about the risk of things and we make it worse than it really is because we want to solve the problem. It's a problem when we exaggerate. Exaggeration is a lie. We have to be able to get the information out there and that we have to be trusted. Secure Ideas, we joke around. We have a slogan called professionally evil, right? And we're going to hack you like the bad guys do or some ridiculous stuff like that. If you can't trust us to be honest, if you can't trust what I say to you, then why would you do anything I recommended? Why would you let me do the things that I do? There's a phrase, I heard it years ago. I have no idea where I heard it from, but it's always stuck with me. We can't just be ethical. We have to be ethical, right? We have to follow our ethics. We have to follow our morality and do the right thing. But we can't just be ethical. We have to be seen to be ethical. I don't give a crap how honest a person you are, how good a person you are. If everybody else looks at you and thinks you're not, you have a problem. And so we have to be ethical and be seen to be ethical. People have to trust that they can come to us and ask us questions, and we're going to give them the right answer. It's one of the reasons it's one of the reasons why Secure Ideas does not do remediation. We'll tell you what we think the problem is. We'll tell you what we think the solution is, but we don't do the solution. And we may recommend people who do the solution, but we won't take any of, like, we don't get an affiliate fee, we don't get a kickback or a commission or anything else like that. And the reason we don't is not because I don't love money. It's because we don't want people to think that the reason we made that recommendation was fiscal. They're looking ethical, but it not being ethical is pretty bad. But these are the solutions. And that's why I say there's no good solution. There's no end all be all to what we're talking about. We just got to work at it. We got to be better. I hope that when I finally cack off, that people can look back at what I've done and what I've been and thought good came of it. That's my hope. That's my goal. I want people to look back on my career, on my life, and I'm not planning on cacking off anytime soon. I hope. But I hope that people can look back on what I do and think I've helped, think I've done good. And all I want to do is say, do the same thing. Be good. As we said earlier, don't be a dick. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to say any questions, comments, things to throw, whatever. I don't know about wholesome, but okay, I'll go with that.
No specific questions showed up, but you certainly did get the meme game going, I gotta say.
Well, then I've accomplished my goal. I want as many meme games as possible.
you got everybody rolling.
Good.
Yeah, we're definitely shooting for the wholesome. I love what you said about giving the remediation advice, but not doing the remediation.
Yeah.
Because that is something that I, as an individual, am asked to do on a regular basis.
Yeah. So
because I'm a dev, right? So it's, will you come fix it for us? Okay, that's not really how this works. I will teach your devs how to fix it. I will tell you what to do, but that's not. I mean, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
Thank yous are pouring in. I'm sure you can see the.
I do see those, and man, I really appreciate it. I'm glad everybody liked it, or at least people said they liked it. Is that a puppet behind you, Shelby?
Me?
Oh, yes, it is a puppet, and there is a story behind the puppet as well. If you want me to tell it, but
I would love to hear the story. I hate to pick on things in people's room, but
no. So I purposely leave it there so people will comment on it. So my great grandmother actually made that. There was this old song, "The Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly." I don't know if any of you know that.
I know the song.
Yeah, so she made that. It has a hollow mouth hole to it. She also made the little fly and the goat and dog and all the animals that go with it. And then there's a little tape that we used to play when I was a baby. And we used to shove all the animals in her mouth. And when my great grandmother passed away, this is what she left me, was the doll. And awesome. Yeah, now that I'm a little older, though, it creeps me out a little more than anything else. So I do leave it out specifically because I'm afraid that if I pack it away, it'll make its way out on its own.
Yep.
So I figure just leave it there and let it do its thing.
You do understand that the main goal of inheritance is to creep you out, right? If the inheritance does not in some way creep you out, it was not a good inheritance. Hey, Megan, and Velda, it is great to see you.
Kevin, thank you so much for doing the talk today. Really appreciate it.
I hate public speaking. You know that. I'm petrified of public speaking. I've been nauseous all day. You want to make it even worse? Do you know what I realized this morning?
What?
I lost my slide deck. Gone. I swapped machines last week. I swore I had backed up this presentation. I had not. So, you want to talk about timing? I have given a version of this talk one time before. They published the video of that talk yesterday.
Perfect timing.
So I went out to YouTube, played it 2 times, and paused at every single slide so I could copy the slide. It was awful. It was awful.
That is a hilarious story.
Oh.
Yeah, I absolutely love it.
It was all. I did not love it. So I love speaking with you guys. I think what you all do with I almost call it Cowboys and Indians Con. I for the longest time when John first started talking about the Wild West, I could not remember the name of the conference.
Mhm.
And it was stuck in my head that it was known as Cowboys and Indians Con, right? And it just got stuck that way. And I'm sure it irritated John when I was saying it's not the name. But I think what you guys are doing with this stuff is awesome. I'm honored to be a part of it. And anytime you want me to babble in front of a screen, I will babble in front of a screen for you all.
Y'all heard that
Thank
here,
you, Kevin.
right?
Yes, we're definitely going to hold you to it. We love listening to your talks.
I mean,
yeah.
how could you not like a conference that the green room was actually green? It's still weirding me out. It's the first
awesome.
time the green room was actually green.
An actually green room. We have a theater here in Columbus where the green room is green. Back in my musician days, I walked in and was like, hey!
It's really green. The first time I was on CNN, they put me in the green room. That sounds so concealed. Well, the first time I was
Yeah.
they put me in the green room, and I was like, "It's blue." And I'll be honest, part of me thought I was in the wrong room, and I was like, you know how you get an idea in your head, and it starts to freak you out a little bit, right? Well, I got the idea in my head that I was in the wrong room, and they were not going to find me when it was time for me to talk. Right. And like, I would just be stuck in this random room. And then I started thinking, oh my God, should I go and find somebody? Should I and I even I opened the door and looked out to see if it said green room on the outside of it. It didn't. Right. And so I just got into my own head that I had somehow been put in a room and I was supposed to be somewhere else. And by the time I got on camera, I was sweating. It was bad. It was really, really bad. So,
I can totally visualize that whole
I totally
thing
can,
that just happened. I can just totally see you in there like, wait, is this right? No, it's not right. I'm sorry. What's going to happen?
well, and I was in the room by myself. Like I knew I was going to be on a show with other panelists. And they weren't in the room. So in my head, they were in the right room. Right?
The room that was green. Because
it was really, really bad. It was really, really
That's
bad.
too
So
funny,
I loved being part of this. Thank you very much. Is there anything you guys need me to? I know I'm supposed to banter for a while. I gave Hilda a hard time about that.
Yeah, well, tell me about it. I'm supposedly the chief banterer, and that's about the worst thing that I know how to do. So
You've been amazing all
An
that.
awesome job.
Bill, yeah, you've been awesome. You both have. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
yeah, thank you.
And Kevin, I just got to say that charity that I can't remember whether you said that you're part of who runs it or whether you actually created it yourself, but that's awesome.
No. I don't run it. And I didn't create it myself.
Oh, you're just part of it?
I'm just a member.
Okay, gotcha. Well,
Yeah.
it's awesome. I'm definitely going to have to get my husband involved with it because he'll have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, it's a blast. It is definitely a blast. I do have to disagree with one of the things that was just said in Slack. I don't know how to pronounce your name. I apologize. And I'm not going to try to mangle it. But no question is a stupid question. Yes, there are lots of questions that are stupid questions. Ask them anyways. And the reason I say that is because I've heard the idea that no question is a stupid question. And what I have found is that phrase causes people not to ask questions. It does the opposite of what it's supposed to do. And the reason is people aren't dumb. Okay. Half of the people in the world are below average, just math. But what people will do is they'll think of a question that is a stupid question, and then they won't ask it because they themselves know it's stupid, right? But the problem is the fact that they have the question means other people do also, right? And so we've got to stop it. Oh man, it's the same thing as we have to stop saying that the First Amendment does not protect crying fire in a crowded theater. It actually does. That court case was overturned in 1969. We remember what I said about understanding and honesty? We got to be right.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
No, that's fine. You're absolutely right.
I'm not the last speaker, right?
You're the last
You
speaker.
are, yeah. You ended the show.
Maybe you all are from go. Have a nice day. What does Carol Burnett?
Thank Kevin. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Have fun.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Bill, did you have some closing remarks or statements that you wanted to make?
Yeah, I want to talk for a second about the about OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project. It's obviously come up a couple of times during this, and I never really gave my pitch because, well, I just didn't. But it's come up in almost every single one of the talks. So OWASP is a international organization that's designed to evangelize application security to developers. They do three things. One, they have chapters, which is just like anything ISAC or anything else that you go to. We have a meeting, we have a speaker, normally we have lunch. Right now we have a Zoom call or Hangouts. And we sit and chit chat and talk about application security. And it's all well and good. And it's a great way to network and meet people and find jobs and find people who are looking for jobs and whatnot. So that's good stuff. Two, they have conferences. I mentioned that with Kevin, that I went to Global AppSec and took his training class. They run trainings there. It's a regular conference, just like any other conference. It's just like this one, except normally in person, but right now they're online too. So it's a normal thing. And then the third thing we do is projects. And there's two kinds of projects. There's documentation projects and there's software projects. Documentation projects, we really didn't talk about any of them during this because everybody was showing their own tools. But some of my favorites are the application security verification standard, which makes an excellent both test plan and also design tool for applications. Take a look at that at some point. You can just Google it. Don't go to OWASP and search for it. Their searches. Well, actually, it's on GitHub now. It might be better. I hadn't thought about that. Okay, I have to change my spiel. And then they have software projects, which we talked about, the big one, which is that attack proxy. Obviously, we had 2 talks on that. It's a very big piece of it. There's many others. We talked about keeping track of out-of-date components. There's a product called Dependency Track that's an OWASP tool that I'm working on configuring for a customer right now. So OWASP is the point place for application security knowledge.
How do they reach out to like local chapters? Is it on the website to
Yep.
reach out to like a local chapter?
OWASP.org. It's fantastic. There are, I think, 302 now chapters. I might be wrong about that. There's a lot all over the world. So go check it out. There might be one right near you and you get to meet a bunch of application security people. That's not a bad thing.
You're right.
So give it a shot. Oh, somebody actually typed it in properly, so it showed the blurb. That's right.